Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon, the Executive Director of Churches of Middle East Peace. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 2025. We're now at 747 days since the beginning of what the world has called the Israel-Hamas war, or the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, or what many experts say is genocide. CMEP today attended a briefing from insiders about what's happening in terms of the ceasefire agreement, and I wanted to share some of that with you. This is from a virtual briefing by the Middle East Institute. The analysis I wanted to share is from Nathan Sachs, who's a senior fellow at MEI. He said that Trump is putting a lot of pressure on Israelis and regional partners like Qatar and Hamas. Much more of a ceasefire. What's happening now is much more of a ceasefire than previous ones, but it's still quite tentative. There's concerns that some of the partners have entered into the conversation a bit disingenuously. For example, Israel does not believe that Hamas is going to disarm or stay out of governance, and that's their requirements. This is what we were talking about when everybody said, why are you not so thrilled by the ceasefire? Because on one hand, President Trump really accomplished something significant. Arab states, European states, Hamas and Israel all saying, okay, we agreed to these 20 points. Now, they said they agreed to it on one hand, but Netanyahu contradicted it on the steps of the White House. And then you have the dynamics where Hamas has never said that they will completely disarm as of yet, and that's one of the main requirements. So you have this agreement that's not really an agreement, and how is that progress? If it's progress in the right direction, may it hold. And, that's the desire of our heart. We pray and work to that end. President Trump does not want the war to come back. Qataris have a lot to gain from stopping the war. And so you have a lot of international power and influence that's against escalations continuing or increasing. Trump does carry sway with Israel. He's very liked by the far right. Given his unpredictability, he could always pause future MOU aid agreements, which has become a major incentive for Israel to maintain the ceasefire, but also an incentive in other ways. Netanyahu's two goals of the war have been returning of the hostages. Now, many in Israel would say that hostages have just been an excuse, but all of the living hostages have been returned. And now there's this issue of the bodies that either can't be found or Hamas is not working hard enough to return. So there's still a bit of an issue in terms of the hostages. The families of hostages are saying the war should be resumed, the ceasefire is broken until all the bodies are returned. Now, the other main goal, number two, for Netanyahu is the removal of Hamas as a governing or fighting entity in Gaza. Hamas has said they're willing to do that, but there's still a question about how that's going to happen. So the hostages have been bargaining chips for Hamas, and debate in Israel's emerged about which goal is more important. Pretty quickly, Netanyahu and his advisors agreed the second aim was more important, the removal of Hamas as a governing or fighting entity, even at the expense of returning the hostages. But then President Trump came in, demanded the reverse, adopted the viewpoint that the hostages' families should be prioritized over the aim of a complete victory. So that's where things stand. So what's happening in Gaza? Discussions are underway on deploying international security forces. Remember, if international forces go to Gaza, it means Israel can't bomb it. The UAE presidential advisor Gargash said today at the Reuters Next Gulf Summit in Abu Dhabi, he's added that scaling up humanitarian aid remains a priority and cautioned against maximalist views amongst Israeli right-wing leaders, saying that any annexation of Palestinian territory is a red line. Now, only 986 trucks total have entered into Gaza since the ceasefire took effect. We're at, day 10 now, something like that? We're talking about Monday a week ago. It's Wednesday now. This is according to the Gaza office. They say the number represents 15% of the 6,600 deliveries that were expected by October 20th. So only 986 trucks of 6,600 that were expected. The office warned that the shortfall threatens essential supplies for civilians. Destruction and forced displacement is still persisting in the West Bank, according to the UNRWA affairs officer, saying that a drawdown in Gaza should not become an opportunity to tighten the grip of occupation elsewhere. The future of the Gaza people and the West Bank are one. Now, a Hamas delegation met with Turkish officials, or is meeting with Turkish officials in Qatar. They did meet on Tuesday. They said the group remains committed to the ceasefire despite Israel's repeated violations. Israel's saying Hamas has violated things because they're not returning the bodies. Hamas is saying Israel has violated because there continue to be numerous deaths and attacks, and there was even a major bombing in Gaza as well. And so there was a statement about the failing to open the Rafah crossing for the travel of sick and injured people. It's a prevention of the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The delegation's head, Darwish, reaffirmed the inalienable rights of our people to self-determination and their right to an independent state with Jerusalem as its capital, which we know, of course, is against Israeli policy. Hamas yesterday returned the body of 85-year-old Arya Zalmanovich, the oldest Israeli hostage. I talked about him some yesterday. He was abducted from his home in Kibbutz Nir Oz, killed in captivity on November 17th, 2023. A 38-year-old Master Sergeant Tamir Adar, a member of the community security squad, killed fighting Hamas gunmen during the October 7th attack. Israel confirmed late Tuesday. So both of those bodies, the 38-year-old Master Sergeant Tamir Adar and Aryeh Zalmanovich, were both two of the bodies that were returned. The International Committee of the Red Cross had earlier received bodies in Gaza in a handover by the Qassam Brigades, the armed wing of Hamas. Hamas has now returned 15 of the 28 deceased hostages under the current ceasefire. Earlier, Israel had returned to the ICRC the bodies of 15 Palestinians. You'll recall that the agreement is for every Israeli body returned, 15 Palestinian bodies are returned. Al Jazeera reported that 54 additional Palestinian bodies were recently handed over and are scheduled to be buried today. At the moment, the health ministry is continuing ground preparations, and it's possible that the burials will take place in the city of Deir al-Balah in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu discussed Zachi Hanegbi from his roles Netanyahu dismissed Hanegbi from his role as National Security Advisor and head of the National Security Council. Hanegbi's deputy Gil Reich is the acting head of the council and is pending a permanent appointment. That's a really big deal. I'll try to find out more about the significance of that in terms of Israeli domestic politics. An Israeli drone killed a person riding a motorcycle in the southern Lebanese town of Ain Khana. That happened in the past day. And the Turkish role in persuading Hamas to accept President Trump's ceasefire deal has turned its once contentious ties to the group into a geopolitical advantage. Two regional sources said that Hamas officials have said Ankara's message urging Hamas to accept the U.S.-backed plan was decisive, prompting Trump to praise President Erdogan as one of the most powerful and reliable allies. Analysts say the breakthrough has given Turkey new diplomatic leverage in Washington, with officials expected to use goodwill to push for progress on F-35 fighter jet sales, relief from U.S. sanctions, and support for its security goals in Syria. The effort also reestablished Turkey's influence in Middle East diplomacy, unsettling Israel and Arab rivals such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and capped a reset in U.S.-Turkey relations following Erdogan's September visit to the White House. The International Court of Justice will deliver an advisory opinion on Israel's obligations to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. That's supposed to have happened today. The ruling follows a December 2024 request by the UN General Assembly for the clarification of Israel's duties and responsibilities, occupying power to guaranteed unhindered provision of urgently needed supplies essential to the survival of Palestinian civilians. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance met with Prime Minister Netanyahu in West Jerusalem today to discuss phase 2 of the ceasefire deal brokered between Israel and Hamas. Later in the day, Vance met with President Herzog and his official residence to talk about ways to move forward and how to implement the 20-point peace deal. Israel's response, I read that the peace deal is hanging by a thread and that Vice President Vance had to go because of U.S. concerns that it's falling apart. That's an unofficial reading. The Knesset welcomed Vice President Vance to Israel by passing 2 different West Bank annexation bills in the first reading. Basically, while Vance was in the meeting with Netanyahu today, the 2 bills will be sent to committee. They probably will die there, but the politics behind their passing is more important than the bills themselves. Trump and Vice President Vance warned yesterday that Hamas will face swift, severe action if it does not comply with U.S.-backed ceasefire plans, including disarmament. Vance was visiting a military facility in the south of Israel where U.S. troops are monitoring the agreement. Some fighters could receive clemency. Hamas must disarm. If Hamas doesn't cooperate, as the President of the United States says, Hamas will be obliterated. So warned Vance. Earlier, Trump wrote that an end to Hamas would be fast, furious, and brutal if the group fails to do what is right. Jared Kushner said yesterday that Kiryat Gat, Israel, in Kiryat Gat that the U.S. and its allies are considering starting reconstruction where Israel is in control of Gaza. No reconstruction funds will be going to the areas that Hamas controls. Now, this is very disconcerting. The Palestinian people who are the civilian of Gaza should have self-determination. Where they are located should be rebuilt, not where there's Israeli control. So this could be a very disconcerting move. He said this is a step towards creating a new Gaza. Now, he said it will give Palestinians a place to go, to have jobs, and to live. Kushner added the plan remains under discussion and did not clarify whether the areas would be overseen by Israeli forces or the future international administration. This is where it all lies. This is where so many things are unresolved. I wanted to close just by letting you know we had a powerful vigil today. We were acknowledging 2 years of atrocities. We had a number of diverse ecumenical leaders lamenting the incredible, atrocious loss of life, and coming together to remind ourselves that we must trust in God, that he is sovereign and he is good. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. We had many leaders join us virtually, such as Reverend Ashraf Tanus, a Lutheran pastor from Palestine. We also had the new head of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Presiding Bishop Yael Curry, join us, Deacon Paul Fahili of the Episcopal Church, Bishop Hope Morgan Ward of the United Methodist Church, Mother Agapia Stephanopoulos, an Orthodox nun who's spent many years living in Jerusalem, also was one of our guests, leading us in prayer and reflection. Fael on the CMEP team shared a powerful poem in spoken word style that moved me and many others to tears, while also inspiring us to not give up hope. Hannah, also on the CMEP team, sang a hymn over us, reminding us of God's steadfast presence and his goodness. I'd encourage you to pray through that vigil and watch it. It will be available on the CMEP YouTube channel if it's not already. Might we not give up meeting together in these hard times? And may God go before us, and may peace, lasting peace, and justice come quickly. Many blessings to you all in the name of Christ. Amen.